Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below the video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Philip Simon, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Mac 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So a massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'll hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
It's so insane.
Exactly, yeah.
We go after those people who kill people and kill them.
Yeah, Eddie Bravo's the man, yeah.
Yeah. He's
What the
pretty
hell
cool.
have I joined?
He's a very cool dude.
Killing people now.
He actually woke me up to all this, to tell you the truth.
Hey, Nathan.
None of this sounds very family friendly. I'm sure it's metaphorically killing people.
Oh man, Nathan the legend. Man, it's good to be here with you, man. I really appreciate what you do, man.
What's your name?
My name's Edan. Edan.
Edan. Very nice to meet you, Edan.
Yes.
Thank you for the compliments. Hope I don't disappoint you.
Man, it's an honor, man.
So I listened
sounds
to
like me
QE's
when I
show
first
yesterday,
joined.
and then I listened.
That's why I called him a legend, Edan. I'm with you.
Legend.
Right on, man.
Speaking of legend, sorry, someone
That's
mentioned
what I
QE's
said.
show from yesterday about Ranty.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm telling you, I watched that. Well, I went fishing first, and then when I came back, everything was all lined up ready for me to. So I was just going, oh, my God, man. There's just no recovery. And then I listened to that thing you did the other day again, and I just was like, man, I was hearing literally like a barbershop quartet of fat ladies singing, bro. It's over.
Yeah, it's bad news.
People
'cause
are done.
thanks to Conspiracy Cats, we've got a direct connection between the assertion made at the Isle of Man when we were arguing about perspective, and as a result, you know, the calculator we were arguing with, or they were arguing with, and drawing a straight line tangent to what they claimed was being proven by it, which was Earth curve. Well, now they say it's refracted, but there was no direct link between them saying it was a straight line to it back then and having a curved line to it now, until you have somebody bring up perspective and start utilising it in a flat Earth straw man. You know, and then you end up with someone like Rumpus here to defend it and having to be on the ropes over his exclusive of perspective calculations that drew a tangent to the horizon to claim it was being proven as Earth curve. Now, his defence was, oh, that was just a dumbed down version back then. That's why I didn't refract the geometric horizon I claimed was Earth curve, getting in the way of the Isle of Man, just to elaborate on his answer when I had him absolutely over the ropes. But that's a beautiful connection to make. Here's you saying Earth curve, geometric horizon gets in the way, and here's you doing the maths with a tangent straight line to it. What's that? It's a bent line. Well, that invalidates all of the Earth curve mathematics. Excellent. Because what does the Earth curve mathematics do? Well, it asserts that Earth curve gets in the way, and to assert it, they draw a tangent to it, a straight line. The same straight line to a horizon they say doesn't exist anymore. And it never did exist. Earth curve doesn't exist. And that's the bottom line. They've got to figure out a way of double speaking, and in that instance with Rumpus lying, saying, oh yes, of course I refracted what I claimed to be proven as a physical edge getting in the way of the Isle of Man. Of course I told you it was refracted. No, he didn't. They just have to lie, and that's what this is all about. It's just a little game to get away with lying about what your world is. And in this case, your world includes a physical Earth curve edge obstruction, and that's got tangent lines drawn to it in their mathematics. And when we point out that it's beyond the limitations, they say it's got a bent line to it, invalidating their geometry. It's epic.
Yeah, that 43-minute cutout you did was great. That Conspiracy Cats Globe Massacre, that says it all right there.
Yeah, the bit with Rumpus. I mean, I'm going to do a 10th Man suggestion, actually, a two-parter. So the second part, that's coming out tonight. Or it'll have already come out if you're watching this and you're not a member.
Can't wait.
The 7/6 refraction, though, it was always meant to be looming with respect to the horizon. I thought everybody was on board with that.
Well, I've got Rumpus saying exactly that, almost verbatim, the words that you just used. So I told him I got a clip lined up because I went and got it months and months ago. As soon as this Black Swan started to make headway, he came on board and started telling us about the refracted horizon, non-tangent based, etc. with Andrew Thomas Young. Now, back in the day, he had that up on his computer whilst telling us that it's refracted because it's positioned with respect to the horizon. What he's trying to prove, i.e. a physical edge getting in the way. Well, at the time, he knew damn well that Andrew Thomas Young's information was prevalent because it was on the screen and he was quickly scrolling past it when he said it. So he's knowing full well that he's lying. He knew back then in 2017 that he was lying. Now he's lying. That's why he's stuttering and being held to task for what he actually did, which was draw a tangent to it. He knows it. I know it. He knew that it wasn't a physical geometric sphere edge horizon to get in the way because he had Andrew Thomas Young's data back then. It was on screen for my audience as he scrolled past it quickly. So these people are
Nathan, it's 'cause you didn't
trained,
understand.
knowing liars. Rumpus knew he was lying about the physicality of the horizon he was claiming to prove at the Isle of Man. He knew because he had Andrew Thomas Young's justification for it not being a physical location. He just scrolled past it and told us that it's refracted because of its position with respect to the horizon, meaning that he's proving out the Earth curve edge as the horizon in that description and saying the reason it doesn't match in this instance is because the targets have moved, and I know they've moved because they've moved with respect to the Earth curve horizon I'm trying to prove. Nothing to do with it being a refracted horizon. Absolutely not. It's claimed to be Earth curve, and that was what was claimed to be proving it. And when it didn't, they bent the position of the targets. So they're all screwed. It really is. This is the aftermath. We're slopping up the mess, but it's being made nice and clear thanks to cats. Because as we slop up the mess, we've got all these connections being drawn as they start talking about perspective. You're like, well, this is brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
But then they try to say he did it because you didn't understand. If you listen to that right away, well, you didn't understand, Nathan, so I had to really explain it to you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, they tell us that the version they gave us back then was a dumbed down version. Yeah, right. It was only dumbed down because it didn't take into consideration the geometric horizon's non-physical, non-geometric position explained in Andrew Thomas Young's diagram. So the defence was, well, that was a dumbed down version. Oh, really? And I wonder how dumbed down a perspective-only 2D flat Earth model is that you're holding up to burn. Is that dumbed down? Hasn't even got the observation height. We've had 4. No weather factored in. Is that not dumbed down? But meanwhile, the nitty-gritty intricacies of where the physical horizon that was Earth curve getting in the way of the Isle of Man is now in a non-physical, non-geometric position. Yeah? That's how much intricacy we need to pay attention to when they give us the dumbed-down version of Earth without a horizon that also blocks the Isle of Man. Meanwhile, we'll set fire to this straw man of perspective only. Not dumbed down much on their side when they burn a straw man. What a joke.
Yeah, but it's a tactic they use.
Ranty is claiming that he's looking into research that will allow a 15 to 20 mile locally flat water from your location, but it's still a globe. And this is based on the force of gravity. And the photograph, they have already proven themselves correct with trigonometry. So this is where they're coming from. Like, I mean, Ranty is looking at peer-reviewed papers. We know what peer review is. Obviously, he doesn't. Peer-reviewed papers, reviewed papers that state that it is possible to have locally flat water. Why are they coming up with this nonsense? Because the water is flat. So they're trying to keep locally flat water, so stop people asking questions. How come I can see for 20 miles? You know, if we're on a globe. They're trying to stop that. You know, with, oh, it's still flat locally, but it is still a globe. That's all that's going on with these peer-reviewed nonsense. Whatever research Branty is doing, whatever it is, it's complete and utter manure. But Branty is run full
What's
steam
gravity?
with this.
What is
But see,
gravity?
look, yeah, but that's
Well, hold on.
the whole claim is Neil, is crazy. But look, this is Ranty is saying that it'll suit both sides because the ballers will still get to have their globe, but the flat earthers will still be proven right that it being locally flat. Like whatever locally flat means. I mean, it's complete and utter total nonsense. You know, but this is what so that means there was no geometric horizon. I don't know what these mountains are going down over behind that he's claiming is happening. You know,
I'm glad you got there.
Flat water.
Exactly. I'm just glad you got there in the end. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Their
bit of a rant.
argument starts with the horizon, right, Brian? Got to have a geometric horizon. It's asserted in their Earth curve calculations. That's the basis of their argument.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't have it without it, Nathan. It's not possible. You can't have a sphere Earth without a geometric horizon. That's it.
The whole locally flat argument relied on the geometry of Earth being measured. If you're refracting the horizon, then you're not measuring a dip angle anymore to a geometric horizon. That's just it's over.
Precisely. Keep saying it, John. You summarise it so beautifully and succinctly.
Say it again, John.
But that was the basis of the belief that you're on a sphere, is that you can measure a dip angle to a geometric position and do trigonometry.
Yeah, I trimmed out you saying it last time. The last time you said it, it's the only thing that ties them to reality, being able to measure a geometric horizon. That's what ties their belief in orthographic view, their reification of a globe Earth model. That was the thing that tied it to reality. And now it's not tied to reality at all. Don't have a geometric horizon, really? Well, then the Earth isn't a sphere.
So they got to make up a new reality.
Hey, Nathan, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I got to leave at 7 minutes, so I'll be missing the show today, but I do want to add to this conversation. So locally flat, let's go to the sextant and circle of equal altitudes. So when you're using a sextant, you're basically measuring an angle to a star. And in order to do that, you're using a triangle. So you're on a boat somewhere in the ocean, and you have a sextant in your hands. You're 9 feet above the water. You will minus that 9 feet in the final calculation and bring that sextant to the surface of the sea, so sea level, right where the water is. So you'll minus that 9 feet in your final calculation. From your boat to the horizon is the baseline. Call that 0. The sextant has a 0 marker on it. You have to, that's the index. And you have to set that and make sure that's working right. If your sextant hit a bump and it's off by 2, you got to bring that into account in your final calculation by either adding or minusing 2, because it's got to be at 0. So there's your first line, the horizon. Everything is measured from the horizon up to what? The GP of any star that you're using for navigation. So the circle of equal altitude needs a right angle. So the GP, geographical position, of the sun, the moon, one of the 57 stars they use, 4 of the planets, that's got to be directly over the Earth, exactly a zenith position or the highest point that day. So that 90 degree could be there, and you could have that perpendicular to you on the boat. So the only other line left is the, I think it's called the hypotenuse, or the angled line to the star from you. But you got to have that right angle. Now, when you're doing a sextant and you're using the horizon, and here comes Ranty's 20 mile, right? Guess what? We got 3, 4, 5,000 mile sightings where you have to have a 0 line to the center of that circle of equal altitude be flat. It's more than 20 miles.
I was going to say, isn't it
It's all the way.
Isn't it 600 square nautical miles or something?
Well, that's in relationship to them wanting to do plain PLANE sailing,
Yeah.
crossing
Plain sailing.
latitudes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
in plain sailing. So it's like 20 miles. What are you talking about? It's a lot more than
it's
that.
nonsense. And that's even crossing latitudes. Okay. But the whole point is when you do a circle of equal altitude, I'm going to pop up a picture for you now just because we have a little bit of time. And
Can I say something
go
quick
ahead.
on it? Just very
please.
quick, just for the audience. A circle of equal altitude always has a north, south, east, and west, doesn't it? If you think about it.
Yeah, and from any position on this circle, it's the same distance and the same angle. So if the center of the sun or the GP of that star has to be in the middle, and you draw a circle around it with a compass, you're somewhere on that circle. So if, here we go, we'll do this one, send master B. So if you're anywhere on the circle, it's the same distance. So tell me when you get it, Nathan, and then I'll pop a couple more.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, so you can see here that the center, the subpoint, the zenith, directly noon, the highest point, I don't care how you say it, it's directly over the earth at that one spot at that 1 minute, second of each day. They have all these navigational stars mapped out to where they're going to be. You shoot it with your sextant, and now you know you're 3,000 nautical miles away from it. So, but where? Well, somewhere on that circle. So that means if I'm over there, where you got the little check line that says 3,000 miles, and say Brian is on the opposite side of the circle, he's 3,000 miles away as well if he shoots at the same time from the opposite side. So that's 6,000 nautical miles of flat.
Yeah.
What, 20 miles?
Yeah, exactly. And why? Well, because the triangle you described at the initial stages of that was a triangle. Didn't have a curved base to it.
And we got one more, and I'll end with this just because I got to go. And this one will prove your last statement. Tell me you got it.
Yep, it's up.
Okay, so go back to the last picture I said. Pick one of those to be that one, and we're going to do 2 more sightings of 2 more different stars. And wherever the circles cross, and you see the little red dot, that's me, buddy. That's me shooting it. And guess what? I'm right there because I use 3 things to triangulate myself. And guess what? When you use the star over at zenith, 12 noon, highest position over the earth, mapped out in the nautical almanac for every day, month, year, minute, second, hour, guess what? You need that right angle on each one going to somewhere on that circle. Forget 20 miles. How about the whole Earth?
Yeah, Earth is obviously and observably flat. And if it wasn't,
Have a
none
good
of this
show.
would work. It wouldn't work if it wasn't. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below the video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Chocolate Sane, who's trying to join, Father of a Stolen Child, Flatsoid, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, good morning.
Good afternoon. Hey, how's it going?
We're all doing very well.
Yo, good morning.
Very well. Any further advances on the 4 observer heights we've had for the Blackpool Swan?
Not so far. Not so far.
Hit him early.
Hello,
guys.
Hello, Arwin.
I'll find out. I think I'm debating Ranty Friday now. I thought it was going to be tonight, but it's going to be Friday, so I'll find out Friday.
Yeah, see if you can
Friday
establish
night fights.
an actual observer height. See if they've figured it out yet, given that we've had 4 so far. Any evidence of physical geometric sphere edge horizons, formerly known as Earth curve? That Earth curve that was blocking the Isle of Man back in the day?
Alberoni, he was only several degrees off.
When he measured,
enough, because
measured its
later
geometry.
they got the instruments to get it right, supposedly, right?
No, but nobody claims the horizon is the curve.
Except
But
Alberoni.
they
when
don't
he
have
was
to
claiming
claim
measure
it, they just have to measure it and
Yeah.
then outright state it.
Yeah, but wouldn't you need it to be able to measure it?
How do you measure an apparent position?
Their horizon was claimed to be a physical geometric sphere edge obstruction to things like the Isle of Man, boats, buildings, anything you can name that they can draw a straight line to something they can claim is Earth curve. Until 2020, when it was made plain that the horizon is not a physical geometric sphere edge to obscure the Isle of Man, and Rumpus has recently disclaimed that no, the geometric horizon was not obscuring the Isle of Man. So Earth curve calculations are void.
Well,
So what was
Ranty,
obscuring the Isle of Man then?
Well, they formally drew a tangent to what they claimed was Earth curve and claimed it was blocking the Isle of Man. Now, they don't have that, making all of their calculations void. Now, what they do have, I'm not too concerned about. What I know is I spent a significant period of time with people telling me that Earth curve, with a straight line drawn to it, was getting in the way of the Isle of Man. Now, all of those claims are now void, along with any other claim that the horizon is Earth curve, because we are being told, in no uncertain terms, by globe believers, the horizon is not Earth curve, as claimed in those calculators.
well, hang on now. Ranty is looking into peer-reviewed research papers that states that we could have locally flat water for 15 to 20 miles.
And as discussed in the pre-show, we've got 600 plus nautical miles considered flat because they need it to be. And it is.
It's measured
Locally
flat.
15 to 20 miles. So when you get down 15 to 20 miles, is it still local? Would it
Yeah.
still be locally flat?
Well, what it is,
That's a
based
bit of
on
an
the
issue,
person
yeah.
and knowing the person has made specific claims that an area of about that sort of distance is flat. So is it a shock that he's saying, what I said before still stands, but it's actually a globe as well? So I'm not totally incredible in my claims that I made previously. They still stand, but it's a globe beyond what I said was flat up until now. Yeah, well, shocker.
But sorry, if something's horizontal and flat for 20 miles, is that curving?
No.
So then he's debunking his own claim.
Yeah, he's trying to double speak his way around his previous claims that it was all flat by saying, well, it's all flat up until the point that I measured it flat, but beyond that, I now believe it's a sphere.
Yeah, because
Well, they're contradicting a measurement with the religious belief now.
Yep,
They don't have a measurement contradictory to it. All they have is a belief.
precisely. Previously, as just detailed by John, they had something that tied them to reality. Their model was just a model, but they had an assertion that what you looked at in a photograph was comparable to their geometric horizon in their model, and they could qualify how much it was correlated with that model by saying this is how much the boats, buildings, and Isle of Man were obscured by it. Now, that geometric horizon that formerly was claimed to be proven by how much it obscured things, only exists in the maths. That is to say, Earth curve only exists in maths. It's not the horizon. And they've made that very clear to us.
Well, I don't know what route these mountains are going down over behind then. Because he's making a claim that the mountains are going down behind something. But he's also making a claim that it's locally flat. It's all a bit strange.
As I say, you've got to double speak your way around. If you're a globe believer, that's what you've got to do. Now, Anti's at the arse end of it at the moment. Well, you know, it only gets more painful from here, as you have to double speak your way around quite a few claims you've made as a flat earther. Especially when your dumbed down straw man model of perspective only flat earth claim that nobody makes is being burnt, and we're simultaneously being told in defence of that claim that's needing defending by people like Rumpus, that what they formerly claimed was Earth curve getting in the way of the Isle of Man isn't actually getting in the way at all. It was never calculated as not getting in the way. It was calculated as Earth curve getting in the way, but that isn't the case anymore. And perspective that the calculator completely excludes, that's come to the front also as a direct result of Katz and Co. So Ranty's conversion's very low on the list of things, as he's now going to have his own set of problems with his doublespeak and his cognitive dissonance that he will have to square for himself. That doesn't bother me. It's just useful that when they highlight a new black swan that demonstrates the geometric horizon formerly blocking the Isle of Man Earth curve isn't Earth curve at all, and their picture, which they cropped to hide that fact, is demolishing the assertion that we have mathematics that can qualify where the horizon blocks your view because it's Earth curve. It doesn't. Let's rattle off a few quotes. Nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve, end quote. The horizon is not Earth curvature, end quote. The geometric horizon only exists in the maths, end quote. These are all quotes from fundies who think they're on a globe telling us we can't see Earth curve.
Well, I would argue that you can't see it in the mathematics either, because there's no measurement to tie it to any calculation.
Yeah,
well,
that's why they're
saying the same thing, isn't he? We can't see Earth curve, but it's still a globe.
Yeah, they want to have
all a fantasy.
I just want to parrot Arwin's sentiments in that regard. They want the Earth to be a sphere. They just don't want the consequences of it being a sphere.
Exactly.
Correct, the fantasy. It's all a fantasy.
Right. They just want to visualize.
The way you really say that, you can't see Earth curve, but it's a sphere.
That's what they were Yes, chocolate.
That's essentially what he's saying.
Exactly. That is essentially what they're saying. What formerly was just simply asserted to be visible in reality, Earth curve blocking things, now cannot be seen. You cannot see the geometric horizon. That is Earth curve.
But it's still a sphere.
What Ranty is saying, chocolate, is before Arwen says what he's going to say, because we kind of cut him off. What Ranty is saying is that he's looking into peer-reviewed papers that research that state that it's going to be locally flat for 15 to 20 miles, but it's still a sphere. They'll always be locally flat, but it's still a sphere for 15 to 20 miles locally flat.
What?
This is all caused by the force of gravity.
Shit, that's a lie in itself. And when you get to the 21st mile, then it starts to bend.
106 years.
How many flat planes make a ball?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
it's a geodetic surveying assertion, isn't it? So you've got a disco ball for an Earth, local flat sections. Well, where do you get the little angle where you suddenly have to compensate for the fact that it was locally flat for the last 20 miles? Do you suddenly go over a much bigger hump to get onto the next little flat section?
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. When you get to the 21st mile,
does that apply to the oceans as well?
I got Neil trying to repeat his assertion. He's tried to get in twice, so we'll go Neil and then Brian.
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, at the 21st mile, does it start to bend? And that's what he's talking about. He's talking about water. It's locally flat for 15 to 20 miles. So if you're on water and you're looking locally, it's flat for 15 to 20 miles. But when it gets to that 21st, that's when the bend starts happening. That's a bunch of nonsense.
Exactly. Was it John or Brian?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying, do they use trigonometry for these assertions?
Look, it's like this, right? You have ships out on the ocean firing at other ships and targeting other ships at 50 nautical miles. You have sonar from submarines targeting stuff at ridiculous distances. So I really don't know how this locally flat is going to work.
As I say, it isn't. The Earth that presents itself to us is flat. And when you assert that it's a sphere and you're going to make measurements of the world that presents itself, you need a way to get from your assertion that you live on a sphere to the actual flat plane that you dwell atop. Well, in the case of geodetic surveyors, they draw out a tangent plane. That is to say that when you stand up straight and drop a piece of string with a weight on it, a plumb line, that would point straight down. But they assume when they reference a model that you're pointing off at a particular angle on a sphere. And they explain it by saying, well, it's relative to you, you're always on the top of the ball, gravity, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, in the datum, you're pointing out at a specific angle to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. And what they do is use that straight line to the centre of the Earth to draw out a flat plane with a 90-degree angle. And then they can start doing stuff, this was described in the pre-show, when measuring angles to stars, etc., etc. So they need straight lines and angles. Now, the way Katz did this was to say, I'm doing you, flat earthers, a favour. Look, I'm doing it all flat. Well, no, to get his angles, he needs right angles so he can actually do the trig. So he starts off with a flat plane so he can get the angles, when he can't do that on a globe. And that's reflected in how they survey it. So when they survey it, they draw out a tangent plane, a flat surface to actually work on, with a presupposition that you've got a straight line to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, and that'll give you 90-degree when you give the flat plane to yourself back after assuming it's a sphere. So it's a very convoluted, nonsensical way of saying, I am going to operate on a flat surface, but I'm going to beg the question that it's spherical anyway. And that's all Ranty's doing in that regard.
Well, locally flat means always flat, because wherever you are, that's your local area. So if it's locally flat to you,
earlier.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's exactly. I'm just saying the same thing as you said, just in a different way. If it's locally flat when you're looking out to sea from a shore, right? But then it's locally flat when you're 50 miles out to sea, then it means they're basically stating you'll never see this curve, but it's really there.
I'm confused as to why Katz would model it on a flat plane and then say he's doing us a favor. I thought it wasn't flat though.
No, he's doing himself a favour. This was covered in Quantum Eraser's presentation in this regard. How's he going to get an angle to something unless he's got a flat surface beneath it? Given that I don't know if you were here for this, Chocolate, but you've just had 10th Man explain it in the pre-show. You need to get a 90-degree angle. So to do the basic trig, he needs that angle to get his claims of the angular measurements. He can't acquire them from his sphere maths, can he? He's got a curved surface between him and the mountain. So how the hell is he going to get an angle? Well, he's doing us flat earthers a favour to get it. That's what he's doing.
Not just that. Are they trying to claim that the Earth is bigger than it's supposed to be now?
They can't acquire angular sizes through the curve calcs, which asserts that the Earth is a sphere. So they transpose their belief that they're on a sphere back onto a flat plane, just like they do with a tangent plane in geodetic surveying. So he's transposed his belief onto a flat plane so he can gather some data about his claimed angles, use it as a flat earth straw man to burn it later, and then claim that the angles changed to juxtapose it back into a globe earth belief at the end, having burnt the straw man that nobody claims along the way. Well, he thinks he's being smart. It's just about as transparent as a fallacy as you can get. We highlighted it immediately. But he needs the angles.
I have a question. If I'm at a certain point and you're 20 miles away and Chocolate's 20 miles away and Flatsoid's 20 miles away from each other, so the Earth is locally 80 miles flat? Is that how they're doing it? Because if it's locally flat to each of us, you add it up, then you got 80 miles.
I think Brian just said the exact same thing.
You have a flat Earth.
That's what Brian just said. Yeah, exactly. Unless you can consider the world like a video game where when it gets to a certain distance, 20 miles away, it starts to render flat beneath your feet and measure flat beneath your feet. But after a 20-mile distance, it all curves away in a ball-like way. So you stood on, like, if you imagine the Death Star where it's got the cut-off bit, which is going to blow up planets, if you put a flat surface on that little cut-off bit and have that surface move around as you move around, in other words, it's always, quote, locally flat. Well, that's only possible when you render the world flat around you and have only that section flat. Well, that's impossible. It's nonsense. If it was a sphere, it would be a sphere from all locations, always, and it would be obvious.
Well, that's what Google Earth does. Google Earth changed its maths, whatever, around. I think it was in 2019, because people were saying it's when we're using Google Earth, it's always flat. But what they do is they show you representation of reality in the local area. So let's say you're looking at Blackpool. Blackpool will look to you through Google Earth like when you come down to a certain point. It looks basically as it does if you were at that height in Blackpool. But in the distance, everything else, let's just say wherever you are, everything else, because you can see the way the grid works, it's all starting to curve down. So everything in your distance on Google Earth is always based around the globe.
Right.
But where you are is always based around what you will actually see.
Exactly. That's what I had in mind when I was trying to describe it with my Death Star analogy, right? Exactly. So we were part of that transition. So while we were using Google Earth to debate Isle of Man, that transition occurred. Later, Arwin then caught them changing it on Google Street View or a similar derivative. But anyway, yeah, they changed it. And what you saw, forget what's measured, because it's measuring it and showing it with elevation profiles that are flat. But what it showed you in the CGI rendering was a flat surface to your recognition in the top view, even if you had an elevation that was profiled flat beneath it. And then in the distance, it's curving, right? But locally, it's flat. And we found the transition point. So this is 3 years ago, but you can literally show it as you scroll out on your mouse wheel to go up in elevation. There's a point where it transitions from the map that's local that they're actually letting you use. Some of it's done with actual photography, all flat and measured flat with flat topography and not topography, flat elevation profiles with just the topography on top. That's what they give you. And then in the distance it curves. And in the CGI rendering it curves, even though it's measuring flat locally.
Right. As you zoom out from the Google Earth, they blow it literally up like a balloon.
Yeah, and all the scales change. Sorry, just let me get this in, because this was Arwin's point when he brought it back up in 2018, I think it was. So in the Street View, what are you? I don't know if they've corrected this. They probably have now. But when you got to that transition point, right? So they've started to blow it up as a sphere when it's just been represented as flat. When you're looking at all the measurable stuff and photographs, you get to that transition point, and then you move around on the sphere, and what happens is there's a little bar at the bottom right that's got the scale, and as you move your mouse over it, as it's starting to become a spherical rendering to look at, not measure, all the scales go all over the place as you move your mouse around. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? To keep it scaled in the rendering the same as a ball, the scale in the bottom right to show how much of the land it's actually representative of, it goes up and down and up and down. You're like, oh, what a clusterfuck.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's still like that, I think.
What they have now is they're using, well, what they use, not what they have now, but they've always used, but what they're using is what they call tile coordinates. Tile coordinates are just X, Y, Z, basically, Cartesian, no difference. And as you zoom in away from, let's say you open up Google Earth and it shows you the globe Earth, and you zoom in to somewhere, you will suddenly see a grid form. And all the grid will have equal spacing for all the every rectangular part of it. And all those rectangles make up a bigger squares or whatever. But what they do is then when you get into ground level or close to ground level, you see all this, it's all mapped out in this grid. But off in the distance, all the grid lines are all meshing together in a weird form. You're not seeing them go off out into the distance, they all start to mesh together. And that is making a curve out of showing you reality right where you are, but making a curve in the distance. And that's how they're mathematically working it.
Yeah, that's what happens when you wrap a flat plane around a sphere. It doesn't work. And that's why we've got a million maps. Because that's where the actual deception has taken place. What's the deception about? Well, what are we being deceived about? Well, the territory. That's the bottom line. Well, what represents the territory? Well, the maps. Well, how many maps have we got? Well, tens of thousands of them, all slightly different. None of them representative of the world, and go skewy and haywire when you try and wrap it around a ball. Even if it's supposed to be a globe projection, you can't wrap it around a ball correctly. Even if you've got millions and photographs from a fake place called space, you still can't get the scales right when it's wrapped around a ball. Yeah, it's not wrapped around a ball. We're on a flat plane. It's fairly obvious.
Nathan, back in the oil man days.
I kind of laugh when they ask us where's our map and shit. Even their own side says that we don't have an accurate map.
Oh, thanks again to another opportunity for me to say hashtag thanks, cats. That's right, yeah. We have we've been consistently using Google Earth in terms of its actual measurements, because locally, and with all the measurements, it represents as flat. You can draw out an elevation profile and show how flat it is. No drop. Now, bearing in mind that their assertions come with the claim of drop, you'd expect it to be representative in something that's actually claimed to be an accurate measurement of it, and is used professionally with those measurements. Now, our representation, how they sneered when we said that Google Earth was our map, bearing in mind they'd just relinquished it and made it absolutely explicitly clear that it wasn't their model. No. Definitely not the globe Earth model. No. All right. Well, that's because it's a flat Earth model. And we have taken ownership of it, irrespective of their sneering at us when we told them. Yeah, well, now we're in a position where someone's making claims, Cats, Ranty, and Ruhif. And we can hold them to task and quickly show an elevation profile with no drop in your favourite Muppet vision. Now, I immediately challenged them to come up with an equivalent, obviously that did include drop. How are you getting on with that model, lads? It's been a week. You're supposed to be on a sphere. Haven't you got this to your fingertips? We as flat earthers have. We've already given our demonstrations. Where's yours? Ours was so accurate, it had drudged out trawler lanes in the elevation profile. That's how accurate our flat earth presentations have been. You've got crude diagrams dumbed down to the point where they only include perspective as a flat earth straw man. It's pathetic. Is that your level of comprehension when it comes to the world and how it presents, in spite of every word we've said and the list you've got of things we detail, including ones that Ranty's put on? Oh, how? Oh, got Adam joining right in the middle of a rant.
Nathan.
Hello, Adam.
Hey,
but they didn't even present any perspective. They just presented angular size change.
That's correct, Flatstoid. I saw your comments on this in the, I think it was the War Room chat. Yes, elaborate, feel free. There's nothing more to elaborate, really.
I'm gonna do a presentation on this on Bev probably tonight. Then
so, just for the audience's information, myself and Ranty sat through 5 hours of presentations on perspective from Life is Short, one of my Patreons, who very graciously did an extensive study on the subject and detailed all of those different things that are involved. It's still on my channel. I chopped it up into pieces, a bit more digestible, maybe 45 minutes each. I think there's 6 of them or 7 of them, something like that. Anyway, you can check out a very comprehensive, detailed explanation. It looks the business. He's done the work and given explanations that you can go out and validate. Now, it takes a huge amount of time to quantify an observation. Now, that, whatever it was, 4 or 5 hours, was done off the basis of one observation from Red Pill Philosophy. Took 5 hours to detail just the perspective, with a disclaimer that no weather had been taken into consideration. Now, I know Ranty sat through that presentation, yet he sat and watched somebody draw out a couple of straight lines on a graph paper without actually factoring anything to do with perspective that we've detailed. Just their crude understanding of perspective. Not at all. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when Kosho come on and started talking about angular size change with distance, that's not all that goes into perspective. So he was the straw man he was making. He wasn't debunking perspective. I don't even know what he was doing. It was just madness.
Well, he was trying to save Cats and Co. from their very flimsy straw man of their crude trig to acquire perspective when doing it on a flat plane. Now, they couldn't do it on a globe, so they had to utilise that actual trig to burn later as a straw man and say, well, flat earthers claim that, that's why I've done it that way, I've done you a favour. Well, listen out for these things. When people say QE highlighted this and he's so correct. When someone says, I'm doing you a favour, there's no such thing as a free lunch. What do you mean you're doing me a favour? Why would you be doing me a favour? What that actually means is, I'm going to be holding this up as a presentation of something that you haven't said, so I can burn it. That's my favour.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I hear when you say somebody, oh, he's doing us a favor. Aren't you supposed to be trying to prove us wrong? Don't do us any favors. Just prove your point and keep it moving. Stop with the nonsense. Cut it out. Act like an adult. And just prove your point.
And do I need
chocolate. They're
do I
constantly
need to
telling us how the observation can't work on a flat Earth model.
Right, no, so far I've trimmed out Everett Anderson's list that was detailed by Tim Osman, too ranty. An extensive list that included weather. Now, do I now need to go and trim out Ranty sat through a presentation with Life is Short on perspective, and then juxtapose that with your pathetic, feeble attempt to detail the same thing, Cats? It's embarrassing. Now, if you want me to juxtapose what has been claimed in terms of perspective only, which you think you're burning as a straw man for Flat Earth, you're not. You're burning your own pathetic understanding of perspective, and I can demonstrate that by putting it side by side with Life is Short, with Ranty sat there. How embarrassing. Now, given that we have detailed these things, and the guy sat next to you knows it, I'd expect you to, at the very least, detail those things. Now, that's before we get to weather, that we immediately set Kosho to task on. So that's definitely not been factored in. Meanwhile, in defence of your nonsense, Rumpus has had to come here and have a proper bum smacking. While he tells us that, oh, no, the very complex, refracted target-based, begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator didn't need a refracted horizon to be taken into account because it was dumbed down. Now, that very lengthy sentence was about how your model needs a million caveats that we must take into consideration if we're going to critique it. Yet you think you can hold up your pathetic little diagrams, Cats? My God! All that shows is how stupid you are when you think you're representing what we actually claim. And isn't it shocking that the guy on your side, recently transitioned to the globe, didn't mention a word of heavily detailed presentations from Life is Short that he sat through, when you held up that little crappy straw man of what you, Cats, think perspective is? That just demonstrates how stupid you are, given it's your presentation. We have far more comprehensive understanding of perspective than Cats. Now, Cats thinks that he can show his very, very feeble understanding of perspective and say that that's what flat earthers think. Oh no, Cats. We'll just laugh at your rudimentary understanding that you're holding up as a straw man and laugh at you. And then make the list that you've all had there to hand about what we do claim and set you to task getting all those things, Cats, for your straw man that obviously you're still going to stand by, in spite of the fact this is the end of the first week of us pointing out exactly how feeble your understanding of perspective is and how crap it is to burn it as a straw man, when we're going to highlight the devastating fact that perspective was excluded in all Isle of Man claims, like the one on screen. What's that you say? These towers with little wind turbines on them are falling behind the curve of the Earth. Here's the maths of the physical horizon that's doing it. Oh yeah, well what about perspective, we cried. And now, thanks to Cats, perspective's back on the table. But yet this time, with perspective on the table, everyone understanding that things get smaller, we haven't got a geometric horizon to claims blocking Isle of Man. Well, that's very unfortunate for everyone who claimed it, Cats, including Rufy, who's also sat next to you, having drawn tangents to Earth curve horizons. Devastating, mate. Now, for all the people who think that we're in, quote, damage control mode, this is like with Thunderfoot. You're never going to hear the end of Cat's catastrophe. You've got to be kidding, right? Where's your geometric horizon that was asserted in your perspective hijacking Earth curve maths? Oh, yeah, you haven't got one anymore. What about all the claims that Ruhif made, claiming to prove it was there? Oh, they're all void. Void, Cats! Every clown that came here with that calculator has got their claims voided because of you. I hope you're proud.
Yeah, I was shocked at the comments on that last video you put out. These people are blind, stupid, and dumb if they think we're in damage control.
Gotta be kidding. I've heard from the rumour mill that they think we're shying away from the evidence of this Blackpool Tower Black Swan. Oh, no. We have taken ownership of it with our claim that if the Earth was a sphere radius 3959, then every distance to horizon, that's Earth curve, same Earth curve claimed in the maths to block Isle of Man, could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And the horizon in the Blackpool Swan, we're apparently shying away from, is beyond the geometric limitations that were formerly claimed to block the Isle of Man. Unlucky. Oh, I bet Cats has got them all tap dancing to his wonderful proof, see, while we laugh at him for his rudimentary understanding and his exposure of the lack of horizon to block things. Have you figured out how stupid this move was, Cats? Has it sunk in yet? Are you still scratching your head why we were attributing all of this to you? I reckon it'll take him at least a month to figure it out. He's probably scratching his head going, how's this linked to me?
There was one bit now, if I wanted to just put the screen up, in relation to, how this shenanigans started, and that was, as you keep saying, them trying to get us to accept a straw man as for this, and that being just angular size. I know you despaired, sadly, but I don't know if you saw this. That's the reality picture on screen, yeah? That's what they're trying to get us to ascribe to, the world. That's how it should look, and that's why it has to be a ball, because it doesn't look like that, therefore it's not flat, because angular size only straw man means if it doesn't look like that, it has to be a ball. That's fine until you do what they are avoiding, which is to apply the geometry of the ball first, then apply angular size. Again, another straw man, but that's what it should look like with angular size and the ball up where the peak is now in relation. Again, straw man, but that's the force of it. That's what they tried to get us to accept. What we've ended up pulling out is the best Blackpool Swan ever, haven't we? So,
yeah.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. I didn't catch this, but that's epic. Thank you very much. And precisely, we've now got the double dip. This was done in 2016, guys. Anthony pointing out that when you account for angular size, which they said no, and you know why they said no? Because we're dealing with geometry, they told us. Right, lads? No, we don't need perspective. We're dealing with the geometry of Earth getting in the way with a geometric horizon. And Anthony pointed out that no, you'd have to add both angular size, reduction at distance, and the drop. And they said, no, geometry only. Now they're saying, no, we don't have a geometric horizon. The horizon's not Earth curve. Well, that's a big problem, Cats. Thanks for that little segue between these two things. We didn't have that before you brought this up. Kudos. Hashtag thanks, Cats. Thanks, Adam.
Nathan, you heard of it's only the horizon that you can't see. I mean, I don't know what the problem is.
Hold on, Chocolate. Go ahead, SE Montreal.
I was wondering if you heard of the double boat paradox?
Double boat?
Yes.
No?
Well, it goes like this. You have two boats on the ocean, same size, height. They're about 6 to 8 miles apart. And you have two people looking at each other across the front of the boats. The question is, what does the water look like between the two observers? Is there a double drop? Is there a hump? Or is there something else?
Right. If you do the calculations individually to answer your question, on a globe, you would have a dip between them, because from the perspective of each of those two observers individually, the ground falls away at 8 inches per mile squared. So for observer 1, the ground falls away from his position at 8 inches per mile squared. And for observer 2, the ground falls away from his position at 8 inches per mile squared, leaving you with a valley.
Exactly.
Should be valleys all over this damn place.
Hold on, Chocolate's trying to get a reply.
Bring in what Quantum Eraser did back in 2016 and bring in a third person and make a triangle out of the tree. That means they all are looking down into a dip and looking at each other in a dip. It's completely bizarre.
Yeah. The globe Earth mathematics is nonsensical in many respects. That's just one of them. But that's a good one. And that's a 2015 argument. All of this stuff that we had no connection to debunk in the first instance, before the Black Swan that is, was asserted as being a defence with perspective because it was ignored. Not because only perspective accounts for the world if you are cats and have a very rudimentary understanding of perspective. Nevertheless, we asserted that they'd have to apply both. Perspective's real. Thanks, cats. Yeah? Perspective's real? Yeah, it's just not applied in your Earth curve calculations. And further to that, you don't have a geometric horizon anymore. And how nice it is to point out that the entire argument from the Isle of Man was that the horizon was an Earth curve edge getting in the way. And here's our geometric tangent to it to prove it. Not anymore. All void. All Earth curve calculations that assert the horizon's Earth curve getting in the way. All void.
What SE is pointing out is more doublespeak. See, what you're pointing out, what the thing you're pointing out, like I know we all know about it, but it's just more doublespeak because when they need to say there's a bulge in the way, the bulge that Vic West took out of his calculator because of the Isle of Man situation, but when they need to state that there's a bulge in the way due to a photograph, they'll say there's a bulge. When they need to state that something has gone down below a horizon or the horizon is dipped, they'll state a drop. So they state whichever one suits them at the time.
Yeah.
What this
exactly.
shows me,
your own inventor book.
What this shows me is that
guys, can you let SC Montreal respond? Hello. Go ahead, SC Montreal.
All right.
Thanks. I was just gonna say, yeah, exactly. Well said, bro. They have to hold two opposing thoughts simultaneously in their head, and it's just a paradox. I mean, what do you have? You have two drops or a hump. So whenever they want, whatever suits them, they go for the drop. And whatever suits them best, they go for the hump. But we know that you cannot have a hump or a drop without elevation change. So that kills their fantasy.
Correct. And we have challenged them to provide those elevation drop profile changes in a model. Now we have, commandeered the flat representation that is presented in Google Earth. It's used professionally, and at a pinch, it shows exactly what we are describing. No drop. Now we've immediately put them to task to give us an equivalent. Obviously, when they do, we'll start asking questions of why Google Earth isn't comparable, why it's showing as flat, why it's used professionally as flat, why it's measured as flat, why surveyors on the globe side would need to assume it's flat with a tangent plane that references a model as a begging the question fallacy before they measure it and build on it flat. All of those things are going to be very difficult to do, given that they're charging us with models that they have and are very proud that they have a model. Well, we've modelled the profile being claimed in the rudimentary strawman understanding from cats of perspective when burnt as a strawman that Flat Earth doesn't claim. And we've also now modelled it on a flat plane without any drop. Where's the equivalent?
I just wanted to say that they're in damage control.
Yeah, it's projection. I was going to get to that earlier. Thanks, Neil. You saying damage control day 6. What you mean is devastation day 6. That's my title for it. Caused by cats, devastation for the globe maths, devastation for the globe geometry, devastation for the assertion that the horizons get in the way of things, devastation for the globe as a result of cats. Now, damage control is what you guys need to do, while we laugh at your rudimentary understanding of perspective.
I just want to say that none of them paid attention to Adam's presentation the other night on QEs. So none of them, and they probably didn't pay attention to what he said earlier, none of them actually seem to realize what Adam has been saying. To keep stating that we don't know what their claim is and we're not paying attention to them. But it's actually more projection, because they have no idea, it seems, because I heard, from what I've heard them say, they seem to have, like Real Hip's video the next day, they have no idea what Adam's been saying. They're completely ignorant of it.
They don't listen to us. They don't listen to Nathan. When Nathan's talking to Rumpus, he don't listen at the moment.
They can't. They can't. If they listen to us and process what we've said, what's at the end of that process? Well, conversion from globe belief to the understanding that the Earth is obviously and observably and measurably flat. Well, they can't listen to that. They have to Fundy mute it. They have to censor it. And their tactics in doing so are by telling us precisely the very thing that they're doing, like a politician.
I just want to say, shout out to SE Montreal. So I just want to say shout out to SE Montreal, who always keeps it real. Every time I listen to him, he's always keeping it real. He's always sticking to reality. And the same for Dave Rakia. Shout out to him, and shout out to Brian Leakey, who keep it real. They always want to see physical demonstration. They want reality. They don't want nonsense. And they deal with a lot of rubbish from the ballers that won't come in here.
Shout out to him.
Any ballers in Discord found their geometric horizon yet? Anybody gonna champion this? Like,
I was just gonna ask.
Should all of y'all have this in your utility belt? Like, I don't get it.
The Shields came in to try and... What actually happened was a couple of the most shilly of shills came in to troll in damage control mode. And as a result, Kosho had it pointed out explicitly. To quote Kosho, I don't even understand why you'd be asking about weather. Bearing in mind they've got a standard refraction in their globe calculator, and that standard refraction didn't refract the horizon, and that was because it was a dumbed down model. But meanwhile, when we burn a straw man for a flat Earth, no weather. So Kosho, humiliated, sent on his way, tail between his legs, go and get the weather data, you stupid clown. The same weather data we were asked for, you idiot. So that was humiliating. Then Rumpus came in to do the same, and ended up conceding that the very thing he was trying to prove in the Isle of Man debates wasn't blocking the Isle of Man at all. Absolutely devastating. So that's what we've actually had. Damage control. That's what we've had. Rumpus and Kosho come in to try and damage control it. Now, if this was a great proof, normies would be in defending us, debating us with it. You know what I mean? It'd be really easy to wrap your head around and come and chop our heads off and embarrass us. They'd be here doing it.
That's true. I didn't think of that.
How?
That's why I'm asking.
I was just going to say, you know, 7/6R. Looming is not a possibility with 7/6R, because the whole point of 7/6R is that it flattens out the curve. So where is the looming that's supposed to be happening? How can looming happen with 7/6R? Because looming needs something to be coming up from behind the curve that 7/6R supposedly flattens out.
Exactly. I've got that trimmed out for today's trimmed out show. It's kind of a two-parter from yesterday's. But the section where Rumpus is disclaiming precisely that. He's got his 7/6R and he's justifying why things in the distance are moved and how he knows they're refracted. And he knows they're refracted because of their position with respect to the horizon. It's their claim. Their claim is the horizon's Earth curve. Here's my straight line tangent to it. It's getting in the way. What's that? It doesn't quite match with what my math said. Yeah, the target's refracted with respect to the horizon. That's Earth curve getting in the way. Until we showed the black swan.
Branty is causing me.
Not a single glober in the. Not a single glober in the voice.
I was going to say that. I was going to mention that earlier when you all asked. There isn't a single glober here, not one.
No way.
Nope, none.
Way.
No way.
They'd be scared.
Maybe they're in the Batcave suiting up. What's going on, guys?
They're at Gem Pandas.
I think they're at the beginning of understanding why the black swan was so deadly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're trying to make sense of this.
Yeah, like mine's, John. I totally agree. At first, I'm like, why aren't they getting it? It's not sinking in. That works to our advantage. Because then you have things like Tim Osman coming in, holding up his picture that says, this is Earth curve with pictures of multiple horizons. And you go, the horizon's not Earth curve anymore, Tim. And his response is, nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve. Now go to anywhere that advises people on how to debate flat earthers. It says, your argument starts with the horizon. Because it gets in the way of stuff. Here's the geometry. Tim Osman responds to the black swan because of his ignorance. Nobody claims the horizon's Earth curve. And Cat...
3 times.
Go on.
I was going to say 3 times he said it that day, I remember.
Yep. Cat, if he had a comprehension of what the black swan does, he wouldn't be here talking about perspective as a flat earth straw man, because he'd realise that we can segue to our argument with the Isle of Man. But this time it hasn't got a geometric horizon to assert.
Nathan, remember back in the Isle of Man days, they would start claiming that Google Earth wasn't accurate. And what maps would they go to get for absolute accuracy?
Ordnance survey, generally.
Yeah. And what are ordnance survey maps?
Flat.
Flat out maps. Yeah. The best accurate maps they could find were Cartesian coordinate flat out maps. Exactly.
Telling.
So in order to prove globe, they went and found the best flat Earth maps.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Nice.
And in order to claim an angular size differential, they had to first create a flat Earth mathematics. Katz did it in a really crude way and told us he was doing us a favour. That's going to come back to haunt you, mate.
Well, the WGS 84, like pretty much all the global maps are just that. They're projections of globes. So you're never going to get one that's right because we don't live on a globe.
Well,
Precisely.
There's one exception. The flattening of the WGS 84. That actually does work with the latitude and longitude grid. And it's flat. That technically will work using the latitude and longitude grid. You can use that navigationally.
Correct. Once you apply the flattening factor.
Yeah. But where they go, I said this to Tent only in the past 2 days. You know, all these times over the past 6 years where they come out with what they'd say is a flat out map, they just use the AE map, and they say, look, the stars don't work, this star should be here, but it's over there, or the sun doesn't do this, or the moon doesn't do that. Every time they did that, they gave globe Earth circumference distances to the equator on their flat map. They didn't use flat Earth circumference equator distances if you were to use the AE map. You have to use the dimensions of it flat.
That's correct.
I'm not stating it as a model.
I know what you are. Correct, but correct. If it was recognised in 2014 that we were being led to a straw man that they could burn in the form of an azimuthal equidistant projection of a globe, people could have said, well, you're saying it doesn't work, but it's a globe projection. Now, obviously, we're far, far, far too down the road to actually hold that up as a straw man now. People are indoctrinated with it on the flat earth side. So that's never going to happen now. Pointing out that straw man. We do it. Obviously, we say, well, you're not going to hold that straw man up. I don't claim that as a model. That's a false dichotomy that you want to burn as a straw man. Just like this pathetic, rudimentary understanding of perspective. Anyway, it's not our model, and it is a globe projection. So if it doesn't work, well, your globe projection doesn't work. Hello?
Exactly, and that's what I've said to them. When they've started to state that, especially since I learned so much about maps and surveying, they've started to state that such a thing doesn't work on the AE map, right? And I pointed out to them, no, their globe dimensions are using there, because they're using a globe circumference dimension. whereas you have to use a flat circumference dimension for the equator. Whereas if you're going to look at it at all, you're going to have to do that. And what I have had happen about 3 different times, you know, these people like Joss Lays and these who can do all this 3D modeling, I've given them the dimensions they should be working with if they're going to use a strawman AE map flat using latitude and longitude grid for the claims they're making. And not one of them has ever gone and used those dimensions, the correct flat dimensions that they'd have to use, and come and remade their videos or redone their claims. Not one of them. You know why? Because when they go to do that, it'll match up too close. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, because it's not. I'm not claiming a model with it. I'm just stating what they do with the AE map, and what they've done for 6 years is they've kept a hold of their globe dimensions concerning the equator, and then use their globe dimensions to try and say that they're debunking flat Earth, but they're actually debunking their own dimensions.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to fight that straw man. I've contemplated this for a long time, Brian. The first step in getting that on the road of success was to get the flat earthers to realise it and get them to relinquish what had been given to them as a false dichotomy straw man, to reify themselves in the first instance, but then have debunked by other globers. Now, I was totally unsuccessful in every attempt. Well, it's quite good at showing... That's what you get. So if you can't convince your own side that, no, look, if you actually play your cards right, you can get them to claim it on your behalf as a straw man, but then point out it's not your claim, and point out that it's a globe projection. And everything they then detail about its failures are globe failures, because it is a globe projection. Now, I'd love that to happen in ideal fairy world, but that's not, unfortunately, the reality we live in. Mainly because of our own side.
Correct.
Well, what actually happened, Nathan, to the flat earthers, and I've seen it a load of times, and I've corrected a few people on it, but I haven't seen it. I didn't get to correct all the people I'd like to have corrected on it. Is that flat earthers then would take the AE map over the years, and they'd give the circumference of the equator a 25,000 mile circumference. Whereas that, and then the things they're trying to do, they'd be trying to wrangle it around to make it work. When what they should be doing is making the equator 38,900 for 800 plus, if they're going to use that projection. That would change, and then suddenly that changes everything. But as I said, I'm not stating it's correct. I'm not stating it's a model. I'm just stating that was the trick that was pulled on flat earthers. So flat earthers even started treating the flattening of the WGS84, the equator circumference, as a 25,000 mile circumference, which it wouldn't be. So flat earthers had the wood pull over their eyes, and they pulled the trick on themselves by doing that. So when they couldn't make it work, it's because they were using globe dimensions. No, I'm not saying, as I said, I'm not saying it would have worked anyway. Everything would have worked perfect on it anyway. But the truth is, surveyors go from Cartesian flat coordinates, and then their first conversion from there is to the flattening of the WGS84. Whereas they used to try to say that it's converted from globe to flat. No, it's converted from flat to flat, and then converted to oblate spheroid. So the oblate spheroid comes at the end.
I posted in Skype something you might find interesting. It's a channel called Map Men.
Come
on, they've got a video.
Man!
I ain't gonna say it like that.
Where did you post it?
But they've got a video called "Why Every World Map Is Wrong."
I've got belief.
So it's kind of funny.
Hold on, Chocolate. I've got belief as the last entry. Is it on Master B?
The War Room.
Oh, the War Room. Okay.
Yeah, but they also claim that the globe is correct.
I don't have a timestamp or anything. I just wanted to post it. I figure you guys might enjoy that.
They're really good, Nathan. They're like horrible history.
And to percentage, yeah, they claim it's a globe, but they also claim all their maps of this globe are wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, because they say like when you project it onto a flat plane, it gets distorted. But they presuppose that the globe is actually correct when they have no evidence of that.
When I accidentally
Okay.
stumbled on Gem Pandas, they tried to show that picture and hold me to a model and say it doesn't work on your model.
What model?
That's
You
what
know
I
what's
said. I
very,
don't have a model.
you know what's very
I don't
telling
think
about
they.
the Globers? They still will not go off and actually learn about surveying. They'll just take something from a surveying manual that speaks about spherical excess of a triangle, right? And just claim that proves globe. Not one of them will actually learn the process. And
They're
that's very
lazy.
telling. Yeah,
They're
no, it's not
lazy.
lazy. It's not lazy, Neil. It's that they know, it's like the black swan. If they know if they actually learn about it, that there'll be things they won't be able to deny. Like the black swan. If they actually
That's
learn
what
the black
Nathan
swan
just said.
argument, they won't be able to deny it.
That's what Nathan
I don't
just
think.
said. They won't learn it because it's devastating to them.
I don't think they can get high
Well, I
enough
tell
to
you,
even get.
Nah, they know it. They're just denying it. Don't give them too much credit.
They definitely can't get high enough.
Yeah, I don't believe that they can get high enough to take a. It's like taking a 20 by 20 room, right, and taking 5mm images of that room and trying to splice them together.
That's a good analogy. It's a very good analogy. That is what they do.
Pay me
Oh my
60,
God.
$60 million a day, I'll do it.
That
It's
was
close.
pretty good.
Well, it takes some nerve to demand a model of us when they don't have a working one themselves. You know,
That's what I said.
That's irritating.
That's
a little irritating.
Well, that's again thanks cats, right? So we've brought up an elevation profile that shows the lay of the land in this exact observation of the Blackpool Swan, with no drop. Where's your equivalent? Where's your model? You bark on about models. Now, because you've said no, Google Earth's definitely not a globe model. Okay, fine. But it definitely does represent the world as flat. Those are the measurements. That's why we are using them. Now, where is your equivalent of this? I want it. Along with the weather data, on top of your rudimentary understanding of perspective. I'm not sure why Ranty didn't, point out what life is short went through him with those 5-hour presentations that he did. I don't get it. But there we go. That's just the reality of the situation. We've got a very rudimentary demonstration to acquire angles to make a flat Earth / globe Earth claim versus what we've actually demonstrated with a disclaimer that doesn't include any weather effects at all, or anything else for that matter. Did you want to make up, Adam?
Yeah, just to address what you're saying, yeah. Thanks, Cats. What they did do was lead us to their straw man that they're saying exists, which is it's on a ball and angular size applies. So what I've put up here, look, Nathan, this is the reality of what happens when you stick this stuff on the geometry their claims occur in. I've got the peak heights here. The distance in terms of how far away the peak is from the observer, this is all in kilometers and then the rest in meters. The net effect of the geometric drop that would have from the start point, where the base of the mountain actually starts in relation to the feet of the observer, and then how that would then play out as geometry for you then to apply angular size change to. And that's what I did to get those pictures. So it was this data that they provided and the positive statements that angular size was what should be applied and that it's on a ball. So we applied all that. And obviously we also did the same with just angular size here. So we applied the two, which was the straw man they wanted to fix this to. So that, like I said, thank you very much, guys, because when we and this was the purpose of me doing it, because I was struggling to understand their claim. So that's kind of why I went away to do it, to visualize what they were saying their claim was. So there's the reality. There's what they're trying to hold us to. But the reality is what they end up doing is holding themselves to that. So yeah, thanks, Cats.
Indeed. Hashtag thanks, Cats. I'm just going to shout out a few super chats. So, shout out to Bobby Zines, who says, I wonder if Ranty now accepts NASA /ISS as legit. I don't know or care, but thank you for the super chat. Really do appreciate the support. Also, shout out to Retro Bill. Bravo for setting a torch to the pathetic straw man peddled by Ranty, Ruhif, and Cats. Burn, baby, burn. Indeed. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making the live show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you for smashing the super chat, hopefully joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Think about
Well-
it. Where do they go?
Well, where they're going is fighting amongst each other now because Ranty and Rumpus are at each other's throats now. Last night on Brandon's, Ranty came in and started just hand waving away at, and Rumpus was saying about 7 over 6R and Lumi.
Hey, I want to add to some information to give you some information if you haven't seen it yet. Tango Ice Blast. There's a tower before the roller coaster. Is 180 feet. That's 10.6 miles away from the observer. 1.62 miles away is Blackpool Tower. That's 519 feet. About half the size of that. There you go. Angular resolution right there.
What do you mean angular
Well,
resolution? That's not angular resolution. That's feet and meters. If you gave me that distance versus that height, the height wouldn't change at any distance, would it?
No.
Right. So it doesn't represent angular size at all.
The second part of my presentation was that about sticking rulers on stuff, trying to ascribe a scale which is not relevant to the image, because it's an image that's subject to too much stuff that you cannot. There's not one thing in the image that's where it should be. Yeah. So how can you use the image to draw an orthographic view to calculate when the point where it should be won't be? Even if you assume it's flat, you're still not getting with a photograph something you can pixelate, take lines to, put rulers on to give them a place in reality.
Making that crackling in Discord. You have to show, so I couldn't catch it quick enough.
That's kind of what I commented last night in your chat, Nathan. I think he was there, but Sean Hawkins was there. And this is what I think we've got now. We've got this civil war where the ones that really don't understand it are still stuck with their old rhetoric. And he was arguing, yeah, you can put it on. You can put a ruler on. I'm an idiot, I am. And then I'm getting private messages for Ruhif before my presentation. Going, yeah, you're an idiot. You can't put rulers on stuff. Which, I know. That's why I did the presentation as such. You know what I mean? So it would appear to me that they don't know how to argue it because they don't understand the claims they're making, I think, fundamentally, and they don't understand the contradictions. And it's got them to this point where they've built themselves this huge straw man now.
And
that
it also
they're fucking trying to get out of.
Well, it puts them at a massive disadvantage because if you don't understand the argument from the opponent and then you come up with a little proof, see, like the Blackpool Swan, it's immediately going to get pounced on and you're going to be left scratching your head going, I don't get it. Why are they saying this is disastrous and devastating and horrific? I don't get it. And it's because they don't understand the argument in the first place. And like you say, if you're going to put a ruler on a picture, When you've got things like mountains, it's like it's slanting away from you. That's the most crude way I can verbalize this for an audience. So as you get further up the mountain, it's slightly further away. Well, that puts the scale completely out of whack if you just stick a ruler on it. Now, if that's not the most crude and obvious way of describing this effect, which is massively amplified over huge distances to varying effects, with foreshortening also taken into consideration, the angle you've got of the observation versus the diffraction limit against the deck, none of this has been taken into consideration with their absolutely crude, rudimentary description of a straw man that we don't claim. It's pathetic. And like I say, we'll just point out that, oh, that's what you think we think perspective is. No, mate. That's just what you think perspective is because you're a retard.
These are the pictures again, Nathan. So this is where I put different rulers on and use different points in the pictures to build the scale that you then try to apply to other points in the picture, which is nonsensical because even the points you built the scale on don't apply to the points you built the scale from. So you certainly couldn't apply them to other points on the picture.
Precisely.
That's what I've done.
Very precisely, concisely said, Adam.
Yeah. And that's what you get. A load of incoherent nonsense that doesn't apply to each other, but all those points have been taken from the same image. And like I said, fundamentally, though, for me, what I've done here is take the bottom and the top as my two scalar points, which is 0. Because as far as I can see, the 0 could be the bottom, could be the top, where we're saying it's the shoreline, and it could be any of the points in between. They all are 0 because this is a picture. And all of those zeros are contained in the picture. And they take up so much of the picture, all those zeros, yet all the other stuff at the top's got so many angles, yet all those zeros are contained there.
So this was caught on day 2. So Quantum Eraser was immediately all over this. You need an actual measured angle because you can't acquire it from the picture.
And that's the issue with what Ruhif's done. He's tried to intellectualize it by going, oh, I'm going to do ray tracing. I know, yeah. But as QE said, but the point is he's still taking all of his data by sticking rulers on it. So it's still irrelevant because none of the angular sizes that we're combining or looking or trying to compare are taken from an actual measurement. They're just extracted from this photograph that you can't extract that data from.
And now he said perspective. It's like, fine, well, we can actually charge them with acquiring this data for their straw man because we've highlighted it before. We'll highlight it again. You need actual measurements, real world, starting with the observation height. Critically important if you understand how perspective works. They don't. Now, the fact that they don't and they want to say this is how we understand it, it's just laughable. Embarrassing.
Sorry, Adam.
Well, the final point, just this was the bit that we found, this turbine. And like I said, with all things I've just said with regard to scales, that's fine. And I put the turbine in where it actually, because it's off the page onto the right, just to the edge. But I've drew the line across as to where it sits. Now, I make that point that nothing is where it actually is. But it's all roughly, approximately represented relative to each other. But you get an image of reality. Now, the point is, in this image, look, at the top of the image, we've got 1,000 meters. And 4/5 of the way down, we've got 200 meters. Whilst nothing's exactly the same, because look, the scales, nothing actually matches up. But we are seeing, look, about 1/5 or 200 meters worth of land underneath where we've identified something at 230 meters in reality. So as far as I can see from the picture, yeah, we can see everything that we should be able to see that far away. Yes, there's compaction. Yes, there's a lack of detail. But actually, within that, we've identified across from 0 to 1,000, we've identified points that are represented in the image, confirming we're seeing from the bottom to the top with a little bit of compression, etc. But there's not anything in there when we put this turbine in at 213 that could possibly indicate that there's any curvature in there. It totally destroys it once that turbine's identified.
Correct. And do you know what matches that? The elevation profile readout on Google Earth shows the exact same thing.
And if that's the case, then definitely what we're starting to see here, whether there is ether banding or nothing, but even we see a flat plane stretching out to the opposite shore, which gives us our new 2.7 million mile R value. Which is the bit we've not even started milking yet.
Well, if you look at the mountains, I said this a few days ago, where that shoreline is across there, from there to the top of the mountain, in a distance, in a straight line distance, not a vertical, but in a straight line distance, there's a good bit of distance between those 2 points. So they're just taking that whole block of land, the whole visible 2D block, which is, it can only be 2D on a photo, and they're just taking that whole 2D block of land that's behind being occulted by another block of land, with that being Blackpool, and they're throwing trigonometry at it and counting pixels and coming up with beliefs. That's really all that's happening, isn't it? Because if you were going to actually do correct, really precise angular size change calculations, you'd have to take the distance from the closest, lowest piece of land to the highest piece of land in the background and calculate it in a gradient back the way, because it's getting like the tip of the mountain is way further back than the base that we're looking at of land, isn't it?
Yeah, and the reason this problem's occurring is because the quantifying values that are being ascribed to these rulers are all in meters or feet. Now, they're not representative of an angular size change, which can scale very easily when you're presenting it in the correct way. Now, their maths uses these numbers that don't change with distance, so it doesn't translate correctly, shocker. And why are they using those values? Well, because that's how their Earth curve calculator hijacks the effect of perspective. In other words, the mountain, let's say it's 762 meters on that line, where it says, what does it say? Slight side? Don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Nevertheless,
that's the peak.
It wouldn't matter if this picture was taken at 5 times the distance, 10 times the distance, 100 times the distance. In their orthographic representation, it'll still be 762 meters. That won't ever change. But when you start scaling it with perspective, you end up with one ruler for the people in the foreground, one ruler for the mountain, but that doesn't work either because, as Brian's pointed out, it's sliding its way back, reducing its angular size as it goes, so you can't put rulers next to any of it.
That's a really important point that Brian just raised there, actually. I've not thought of that, but technically, because
That's what I was going to say.
We've got a hypotenuse and we've got an adjacent, we're actually... The base, as Brian says, is nearer. So the base is closer to the observer than the top, because the top measurement is the hypotenuse. So it lengthens by the function of the height of the thing. So the top gets further away, even though it's at the same straight line on your orthographic view. Yeah, you're actually seeing that at a further distance. But we apply the angular size reduction to the top the same as it's calculated on the bottom, when actually it's a good point, Brian.
Not only that, further to that, you have foreshortening. So the limitation of the angle towards the bottom of the mountain will also, as you call it, compress the view of the bottom section, changing the scale.
Yeah, exactly. So even on the same mountain, if we were just looking at the top of the bottom, just the mountain, we had a clear unimpinged view, the scale at the bottom of the mountain would be different to the scale at the top.
Yeah, this is how we pull apart their claim.
Salient.
Go on, QE. Sorry.
It's a salient point that Brian just made. You might have him say that one more time for everyone to hear.
Okay. The distance from the closest, lowest piece of land that we see across the water to the distance of the highest peak behind it is far. There's a lot of distance in miles between those 2 points, whereas this is being determined as one straight 2D block of land. Whereas the truth is, it should be a gradiated angular size change calculation before even any weather is taken into account or anything else. It should be a gradiated angular size change calculation that should take place. Because I'm not sure of the distance, but there could be 20 miles, or I don't know how many miles between the base of the land and the highest point behind it in the photograph.
Yeah, hold on.
Does everyone get that?
Put your picture back up, Adam, please. It makes a mockery of the scale if you do that. So, in terms of Adam's depiction,
Not the
you've got
scale.
sorry, hold on
trig.
1 second. Yeah, the trig that they're doing.
Trig.
Ugh, bloody hell.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Can't slant the ruler back. So in terms of their straight line, they've got that value in feet and inches from an actual height, presumably from Google Earth or something similar. And then to do their basic trig, they need straight lines up the side of the mountain to represent that height value. Brian's point being the base is closer. So in the representation on screen, although you cannot do this in a 2D representation, you'd have to slant the ruler back towards the top of the mountain. But that changes the scale on the ruler, making a mockery of using it.
It also invalidates the angular size of the trig because they only got a straight line to one distance when it's not one distance. That's the point.
Yeah, their crude trig takes the height, and that's the one line. And what do you assume? That your triangle's made up with a straight line to the base of it? Well, the base is closer.
When I did that little picture at the beginning where I photoshopped the mountain range, I'll just refer back to the actual numbers that I used. Just bear with me a sec. If you see here, that's exactly what I did, Brian, was to calculate the distance from the observer and then the relative geographic drop. Now, when I then did that and put it into their picture here, what happens over here is actually, see this peak here, slight side, it actually is down here relative to these other two peaks. Yeah, it was too much work to be able to do that and actually be able to demonstrate it, so it was worth it. But actually, I've got a line, and this peak, it goes up like this. So the relative differences between the peaks would also change. What I showed in this picture was just based on the position of this mountain with the tower. But actually, what you would see is one mountain up here a bit more, one mountain right down here. And like I say, slight side would be literally on the horizon because of the impact of the ball geometry. But again, if you wanted to go into that detail, it would absolutely destroy it. But it is in that. I'll show you the data here. If you look at look, you see the angular size on a ball of all the peaks relative to the Blackpool Tower has much greater variance. Look at this, 0.06 there. It's hard to foul. Look, you see how tiny it would be compared to 0.44 on ours. And so it's if you did play that out, Brian, yeah, then the net impact on the skyline would be even more dramatic in terms of the peaks relative heights to each other because of the way geometry plays out.
Well, I think that would be something we may have to do just to really smash them into the ground, because I don't think they're going to cave in on it so easy. I don't want to say it now because it's coming up in a debate with Ranty, but I think validation that what you showed with the not that you need it or people here need it, but just for the audience, validation of what you showed with the sizes of the mountains behind the tower, that is the actual size they would be on the globe. But I think we may have to do a bit more intricate work because these people are not getting it.
Well, the one I'd stand by, Brian, is the one next to the tower. That's let me put it up. So that's reality, and that's the ball one. So that's the one I'd stand by. Wait. I haven't got it up on that screen there. Ball geometry and angular size. So it's the one next to the tower is the one that I've bothered to represent right, if you see what I mean. The others just fell in line based on that. But like I said, they would all move relative.
Yeah, they'll be all different. They'll be all different sizes because they're all different distances on their globe.
Distances, different heights, and because they're a different height, but so you could have a much bigger mountain because of the way the ball geometry plays out. 10 miles further isn't 10 times 8 meters squared. It's the difference between, say, 50 miles squared minus 40 miles squared. So it's not, it's much bigger than 10 miles times 8 inches per mile squared, relative differential height application to each mountain. It plays out very, very differently and freaky because you're sticking on a ball.
Can I just point out something to Brian, given that
Before you do, just before you do, yes, Adam, because it's a squared function with their drop. So you've got an ever-increasing distance with the further mountains that plays out in that explanation. Anthony, isn't it nice hearing about us discussing double dip?
Yeah. So last night, I was in bed last night, but I have an American friend who sends me timestamps of certain things that happen that he thinks I might be interested in. And he sent me two timestamps last night that Brian needs to be aware of. In the hangout with on Brandon's, Ranty was on the show between 2 hours exactly and 2 hours 30. So a minute either side of 2 hours and a minute either side of 2 hours 30. Ranty's basically ignoring that this dip has been addressed. He's completely ignoring it. He's got his fingers in his ears. He's going la 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 la, and he's completely ignoring the fact that the dip that he claims is supposed to be there, or the drop, or the hidden, or whatever word you want to use to describe it. He's completely ignoring that it's been debunked. So just be aware that he's completely ignoring that, Brian. Because like if he's ignoring it and he's sincere, you can corner him and pelt him with it. Or if he's being dishonest, you can demonstrate his dishonesty, but he's completely ignoring it. So bang on 2 hours and 2 hours 30 on last night's hangout. Some brilliant clips there for you.
Just for my audience's benefit. So this was discussed on yesterday's live show. So Anthony came on and debunked the claim that is asserted by Ranty to have converted him to Globe. Now, based on the declarations made, Anthony's gone back to the observation and debunked those very specific claims. Now, I pinned his comment in that regard to yesterday's live show. So that comment from Anthony in regards to his presentation that he did. I did actually ask Anthony if he'd trim that out and put it on his own channel. Whether or not he's keen, I don't know, but I'm hoping he will. Because it does do exactly that. If people want to say, oh, we were focused on Ranty, well, no, we're not. But we have actually looked at what he's claimed, what he said, and debunked it. He's just ignoring it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's ignoring it.
Technically, if we go off of exactly what Adam said, without even using a gradient for the angular size change, but just use the fact that the mountains would be all at different heights, this photograph is an absolute impossibility on a globe model.
That's right. See, last night he was arguing with Rumpus over whether or not, because he's got this bee in his bonnet about Rumpus, and obviously Rumpus pushes looming, and Ranty's always had an issue with looming. He doesn't think it exists, neither do I. But he was attacking Rumpus last night. Now, Ranty can't argue against looming if he thinks that he lives on a sphere, because looming is their model, right? And this picture, the unedited picture that we've not been playing around with, shows evidence of either looming or a flat plane. Because obviously looming is their explanation for flattening out the curve. But this picture, that lower elevation mountain that's Ruhif identified with the turbine on it, shouldn't be seen. Now, the fact that it's seen is proof of looming or supporting evidence for looming, but it's also supporting evidence for flat. But if it was looming, then the horizon needs to be, 5-6 miles away?
Exactly.
And clearly it's not.
Exactly, Anthony. This is getting more and more concise as time goes by. Yeah, that would all be fine if they had a geometric horizon, because you know it's looming because of its position with respect to the horizon.
Correct. You can't have looming unless you can demonstrate compatibility or support with the horizon being in the right place. If the horizon's not in the right place, then it cannot be looming. So it debunks their argument, and it also debunks Ranty's argument. But what's happening is we're all focused, or Ranty's becoming the focal point, and really it's the argument itself that needs to be reminded, because without the horizon, they can't have looming. That's the point.
Right? Exactly.
You made the same mistake.
Exactly. It's the segue to the Black Swan we didn't have. It's the segue to the Isle of Man perspective that we didn't have. And Katz has given it us like a gift. It's absolutely brilliant.
He said the same thing yesterday with sinking on the numpty clips. Did you listen to it closely?
Go on, you'll have to reiterate the point, I think, because maybe not.
Because he was talking about sinking. right? But before he said sinking, there's no sinking, he said there's no horizon. Well, to have even brain sinking, to even suggest sinking, you must have a horizon, because sinking is always in relation, as is looming, to a horizon. So when he said there were multiple objects in the image and they would be sinking too, which is a train wreck of a disaster, each one of those objects would have to have an associated geometric horizon with it. Get it?
Exactly. It's the perfect segue to the Black Swan. Like I say, I am in no doubt whatsoever that none of them have figured this out yet. While we're shouting it from the hilltops, it'll slowly sink in because it's their segue. We've just taken it.
Well, we're in damage control. Don't you know that?
Yeah, they're definitely in damage control, and they're telling us we're in damage control as projection. Yes, Neil.
Like they say, like they're getting their heads around right now that obviously without gas pressure, without a container, you can't have gas pressure. Without a horizon in the right place, you can't have looming or sinking. And that's really the point we need to be drilling.
Almost. No. The horizon's Earth curve. Yeah. So when you say without the horizon, they can have no looming. No. Let's focus on the main point. Their claim in the first instance is the horizon is Earth curve. It gets in the way of things. So without an Earth curve horizon, there's no Earth curve. Don't worry about the looming bit.
Where do they go from here?
They don't go anywhere because there is no argument. They have no coherent argument with that photo. There's nothing there.
No, it boiled down to a crappy straw man. And I don't know if I can be asked to go back and literally put side by side. Like, it'll look like Cat's drawing in crayon when you compare it to the really, really thorough job that Life is Short did. Now, if you compare those two side by side, it's an embarrassment for Cats. It's like, oh, you still want to claim that that's what we claim, do you clown?
Could I just tell Quantum Eraser, if he doesn't know, just relay what Ranty is actually claiming at the moment?
What's the actual claim? Because I don't even know it.
Well, his claim, what Ranty is actually doing, because this is the backbone of where this is all coming from, is he's claiming that he's been looking into research, peer-reviewed, right, research papers that show that we will always have a locally flat 15 and 20 up to 20 miles radius. There'll always be flat 15 for 15 to 20 miles, but it's still a globe. And it's caused by the force of gravity.
What?
That is the claim. That's what Ranty's at the moment.
It's like a quantum globe then. Like it is a globe until you look at it and then that part becomes flat. Is that how it works?
Not at all. I've already summed this up on the live show. So if you were out there making claims that you can declare that it's flat and you're measuring it flat and you've got pictures of it flat and you're decrying all of the claims of looming and sinking, and then you transition back to the globe, you've got a position where either everything you said leading up to that point is void, leaving you with no credibility, or you say everything I said up until this point is still true and it's a globe. You know, just introduce some cognitive dissonance where you didn't have any before, basically. That's all he's doing. So he retains some credibility. No, I still mean it. It's still flat within 20 miles. You know, I haven't just lost all my credibility by transitioning.
Well, the problem is, and I used to have that same position, is that I thought I could measure the geometry of Earth. Yeah. I thought I had a contradictory measurement to the flat measurements.
Yep. It all hinges on you having a geometric horizon. You've got to have a geometric horizon for all of these assertions. And it's nice that we can now tie it back to the Isle of Man, where it was very specifically claimed that the Earth curve edge horizon got in the way. Nice that we can reference it. Plenty of references to go back to and say, here you go.
Right.
Brian, can you just detail a little bit more as to, as Alwyn, I think, beautifully put, this quantum observing effect? What's the... I know you said gravity, but you know what I mean? What does he actually mean?
What he's trying to say is that he's been looking into research that will suit both sides. He said, so it'll show that it is flat locally for 15 to 20 miles, but it is still also a globe. And this is peer-reviewed papers or whatever. From the best I can, from the few times I've heard him say it, that is it's not verbatim, but that is basically what he's saying, and that it's all due to the forces of gravity. Now, that basically means everywhere you go will be flat, but it's really above.
You can get those. See if you can get those papers.
Lads, I don't know.
Hold on, guys. Hold on, Brian. Hold on, Brian. See if you can get him to give you a citation from those papers, but ultimately, when doing so, you'll find out what the papers are, so we can have a little look at them.
Yeah, he might even just send them to me if I ask them for them. Because I'll ask them to send me what the papers are.
No.
I can send them a message.
Don't ask him.
That point in the debate.
Hold on. Just ask him for a citation from it. Don't say send me the papers, because what are you going to do with if it's reams and reams of it? You know, what's he relying on? What's his citation from those papers? And then, yeah, if he wants to send you the papers as well, fine. But what specifically is relying on? What's his citation? If he's mentioning papers and peer review, get him to actually cite it, not just give you a link to the papers. You know, don't let him turn into a total baller.
Yeah, I know. Just don't let him hand me a 20-page document. Yeah, I understand that.
The claim, Brian, surely isn't that there's some people who've peer-reviewed it. That's not his supporting evidence. It again goes to what we're asking. What is the claim? First of all, I assume he's talking Einsteinian gravity that's having this effect.
No, forces of gravity. Force.
What does peer review mean if you're getting peer reviewed by a bunch of ballers? A bunch of people that believe in the globe are peer reviewing it.
Gatekeeping.
Who peer reviewed
Peer review is basically gatekeeping.
But who peer reviewed it? I'm going to call it peer reviewing because this is so
probably
ridiculous.
Rumpus and Ruhif and Katz.
Oh.
They don't be sharp.
I
Look,
thought that
right.
actual established people did that. Okay.
Don't be bitter. Look,
that
explains. Transition.
I'll say it again then. So the peer review is a statement that other people, right, agree with it. I'm asking, what do these other people agree with?
Yes, exactly. What's the citation for? What's it demonstrating? What's his claim in the first instance? All of these things need to be established. And then you have a look at his citation that backs his claim once you understand it. It's fairly standard stuff. What I was going to say is, don't be too shocked and shaken if the vagueness of, oh, well, it's this. Here's a link to 20-page document. And I'm not going to detail what I'm even claiming. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that's the only reason Ranty's transitioned, but obviously he's going to take full advantage of the very, very low standards on their own side. And when he applies those low standards, what he'll also be subject to, and he'll love this initially, is cheering. And when we debunk his nonsense assertions, he'll have people in our comment section defending him. And like with Katz and Ruhif, he'll take solace in that for a few moments. It just won't last. You'll lose sleep eventually, Ranty. Just ask Katz.
Right. But it's like the Coriolis. If you look up the Coriolis, you get convoluted nonsense. So you get peer reviewed by a bunch of people that believe Earth is a sphere. What does that mean?
Doesn't mean anything.
Well, if anyone is backing, sorry Nathan, you go ahead.
No, I was just answering his question. It doesn't mean anything. So peer review is a way of using a bait and switch to normally assert science where there isn't any. You know, your study becomes more valid or has a better magic mystique about it if you can say the word science and then assert that it's gone through scientific peer review. Just means that people have looked at it. Doesn't mean anything. Whereas actual science would have adhered to a method and it wouldn't require peer review.
That's what I'm saying. They all got
my
the same
buddies
belief
took a look at
anyway.
it. That's what it means. My buddies took a look at it.
They all...
I'm no gynecologist, but I'll have a bloody good look at it.
Oh, man.
Well, basically what it is if there is actually PhD people out there, people of that level out there who are actually sending this out as a possibility, that's a direct consequence of flat Earth. because they know they can't prove anything but locally flat.
Damage control.
Yeah, well, they have to. This way they're saying they don't. This way they don't have to prove a curve for 20 miles, as it's always locally flat, but it's still a ball. But it will always be locally flat. If you're 20 miles from the shore, it's locally flat. If you're 40 miles from the shore, it's locally flat. If you're at the shore, it's locally flat. So you'll never see the curve, but it's always really there. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's just sad, though, isn't it? If you stand back from that, or you have someone like us pointing at it and pointing it out, going, yeah, they're just telling you to believe in curve. They're even telling you that the mathematics of the curve is where the curve resides, and only where the curve resides. So you just have to believe in it. Well,
so they're actually flattening the curve, like they said when this COVID started.
It's a religion. Earth as a sphere, heliocentrism, is a religion. Got to have a certain degree of belief. Arwen summed it up beautifully. It was a really good quote. The globe earthers want to be on a sphere. They just don't want the consequences of it being a sphere.
Yes. A funny thing happened on Jose's.
It's a mystery religion.
Oh, sorry, on Brandon's. Sorry, Arwen. Sorry, I cut in on you. I'll talk in a second.
No, I just wanted to continue that thought that Nathan put out from mine. It is they want it to be a sphere, then they don't want the consequences. Because now I lost my train of thought. Sorry, you go.
Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, my fault, Nathan. Sorry,
This is like a roundabout. Everyone's giving way to each other. Someone make a point.
Indeed.
Yeah, last night on Brandon's, it was very strange because Jose JG came in and he debunked Ranty's claim with occultation, photographic occultation. He just stated that behind him there's a 2-story building and that is blocking out the majority of a 10-story building that's behind that. He said the photo doesn't prove a globe earth or debunk the flat earth. That's all it is. Photographic, it's just occultation. And Ranty, of course, didn't want to know anything about that. He hand waved it away. But Jose was just 100% confident it's debunked. And it doesn't prove anything. So Jose is not on board with his photograph. But what's really strange, though, is the photograph that Jose supposedly turned back to globe with was the very same similar photograph.
Yes, I was going to say. He was of a lighthouse.
He had this, yeah, exactly. He had this tower with this thing in front of the bottom of it, and it was occulting the tower, and that was good enough for him. But now he's debunking Ranty's photograph with the same exact thing. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and the same cognitive pain that will be experienced by Jose will be experienced by Ranty in the time that follows his transition. With that, though, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.